What's going on, guys? In this video we are going to talk about contrapositive and converse. Now let's go ahead and see what it is. So when we have P implies Q, the contrapositive of this statement is not Q implies not P. Now let's go ahead and see whether it's true. We can check it by using truth table. Now let's go ahead and create truth table for this one. The truth table, that's going to be the proof. The truth table is going to be P, Q, and then we have to have not P, not Q. Let's close this one, not Q, and then we have to have P implies Q, and also we have to have not Q implies not Q. Now we are trying to prove this one is equal to this one, then only this statement is true. Okay, now there are four possibilities. P is true, Q is true, P is true, Q is false, P can be false and Q is true, and both of them can be false. Now if P is true, then not P is false. If Q is true, not Q is false. If P is true, not P is false. If Q is false, not Q is true. And then if P is false, not P is true. And if Q is true, not Q is false. And if both of them are false, both of them are true here. Okay. Now then we are going to see P implies Q. If this is premise, and actually for this one, this premise and this conclusion, we are looking at P and Q. So P implies Q. If both of them are true, this is true. The only time it's false is when the premise is true and the conclusion is false. The only time it's false is in this situation. So here premise is true, conclusion is false, so this is false. Premise is false, conclusion is true, that's going to be true, and both of them are false, that's true. For this one, let's look at this one. Not Q implies not, this one should be P. Not Q implies not P. Now not Q is false, that's a premise, false. Both of them, if both of them are false, this is true. And not Q, that's the premise, true and false. The only time implies is become false when the premise is true and the conclusion is false. Here it's happening again. For the previous one, we look at this P implies Q. Here this is premise and this is conclusion. True, false, it's false. Here this is the premise, because if you look at the one, not Q is the first. That implies not P. So this is true, false, this is false. And here the next one is this one. False implies true. So if false is the premise, then it's going to be true always. True. And then here we have true and also true. This is true. Okay, now let's go ahead and compare this one. If you compare both of them are equal, right? True, true, false, false, true, 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 true. That's what we are trying to prove. P implies Q is equivalent to not Q implies not P. And this is the contrapositive. Now what is converse? Converse is, if we have P implies Q, the converse is Q implies P. This is not always true, because for example, if we say square implies a rectangle, but rectangle doesn't always imply a square, right? The opposite is not always true. And that's about contrapositive and converse. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.